千里之行，始于足下. A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Oftentimes, Tao sages will tell stories that come from the highest level, but the idea is that all of us can apply the same example to our own lives at a much lower level. So there is one such story that I want to share with you. And this is ancient Chinese history we're talking about. So this is not a made-up fable, a historical event concerning a historical figure. Chu Zhuang Wang, the three characters that you see on top, Chu Zhuang Wang, and the translation, King Zhuang of Chu. So the first character, Chu, is CHU. That's the name of the kingdom. It's the Chu Guo, the Chu kingdom. Zhuang is the name of the king, and that's the ZHUAN that you see here, Chu Zhuang Wang. This particular figure lived during the what is called the spring-autumn period. This is the period of time right before the Warring Stage period. The Warring Stage period is the time of Lao Zi. So this particular king was before that, was before Lao Zi. His reign lasted from 613 BC to 591 BC. So if you do a little bit of math, you discover that his reign lasts, more than 20 years. He was the king of the Chu kingdom for more than 20 years. So during that time, he built up the kingdom and became one of the so-called five hegemons from the spring-autumn period. It meant that he became one of the five dominant rulers of that time. The spring-autumn period of ancient Chinese history, during that time, no clear overall leader emerged out of all the kingdoms that existed. But there were five who were dominant, who were the most powerful, and those were known as the five hegemons. So he built up his kingdom so that it was powerful enough that he could be dominant. So that's the idea. This is actually the result of applying the Tao to statecraft, to the art of ruling a kingdom. So even though he lived before the time of Lao Tzu, he studied the Tao as well. Remember something that I kept telling everyone, and that is the tradition of the Tao had at least a 2,000-year history before the time of Lao Tzu, and most likely much longer. So the people who came before Lao Tzu, they were all studying the Tao as well. This king was no exception, and he knew how to apply the lessons. And this could account for the success that he had in building up his kingdom to be dominant during that time. So I want to give you a story of Chu Zhuang Wang, this particular king, that illustrates his personality so you can gain some insights into how he did what he did and why. Here's the story of Chu Zhuang Wang, King Zhuang of Chu. A long time ago, during the spring and autumn period of ancient China, there was a ruler who rose to prominence. His name, Chu Zhuang Wang. King Zhuang of the Chu kingdom Under his rule, Chu became increasingly powerful and dominant. One day, he invited all of his ministers, advisors, and generals to a banquet to celebrate a recent victory. He knew that his kingdom was on the rise. So they all gathered together for the feast. As you see in this painting, there was much drinking of wine and toasting one another in celebration. King Zhuang's concubines were all present as well, these beautiful ladies, serving all the guests, plying them with even more wine, or sing and dance for their entertainment. It was a good time for all, as you can see. One of the ladies present, King Zhuang's consort, Lady Xu, was the focus of attention. All the men present had to admit, at least to themselves, that she was simply stunning. She was so incredibly beautiful. They admired her beauty, but they all understood the rule. She was the king's woman after all, so that meant you could look, but you couldn't touch. And that was the rule. If you violated, it would be on pain of death. That's how things were back then. For her part, the lady treated all of them with gracious courtesy and kept her distance from them, which somehow made her even more attractive, not less, more. Their celebration continued well into the night. So it was, as soon as it started to get dark, King Zhuang ordered the candles be lit. So by candlelight, they continued the festivities. More wine, the king called, more food, more music. Party on. Although I'm sure they didn't say party on in ancient China. Then, just as the king was about to propose yet another toast with his guests, a freak gust of wind blew in across the banquet hall. That wind was so strong that it blew out all the candles, so the place plunged into darkness instantly. In the dark, the beautiful Lady Xu felt a man. There was a man that came towards her. This man grabbed her with drunken breath and fumbling hands all over. She struggled free. She managed to grasp the tassel from the man's hat with her hand and pushed him away. Then she felt her way to the king in the dark and told him what just happened. So she was, as you can imagine, not real happy about this. Now she had that tassel in her hand. All the men wore headgear with a tassel on it. So back in those days, in that particular kingdom, it was part of the formal attire. It is the tassel plays the role much like the tie in formal wear today for men. So all the men had a tassel in their headgear, in their hats. So the lady told the king that she could not tell who it was that grabbed her because, well, there was no light at all. Nonetheless, this was a serious offense, a serious breach of protocol. Remember, you could watch, but you could not touch on pain of death. So she said to the king that this breach had to be dealt with immediately. And with the most severe consequence imaginable. So she said to the king, "Your Majesty, order the candles be lit again, and we shall see whose hat is missing its tassel." And that's how we will know who the perpetrator was. Now, the king did not go along with this plan from the lady. Instead, he called out to everyone, still in the dark. He said, "Listen up, everybody. I set up this feast today for every single one of you to enjoy to the utmost. Now, I want all of you to take the tassel out of your hat and drink more wine." So all the guests did as the king ordered. They took out that tassel from their hats, they tossed it down. Then, and only then, did the king order that the candles be lit again. The festivities continued. They could now see everyone. There's a light, but no one had a tassel in his hat. So Lady Xu was not happy about this, to say the least. And later on that night, after it was finally over, she confronted the king. "Why did you do that? I wanted to see who it was that was so rude to me, that violated our rules." King Zhuang said to her, "The purpose of the banquet today is to celebrate and to bring everyone closer together, to bring my ministers, advisors, and generals closer to me. Wine causing people to misbehave is not uncommon. It's not an uncommon aspect of human nature. So if you want to find the man responsible and punish him, wouldn't that ruin the evening for everyone? Wouldn't that defeat the purpose of the celebration?" The lady was still a little unhappy, but at least now she could understand why the king did what he did. So 3 years passed. The kingdom of Chu continued on the rise, and there were many battles with a rival kingdom. 3 years later, after the banquet, in subsequent battles between Chu and a rival kingdom, there was one warrior who distinguished himself. In one military campaign after another, this warrior would always be leading the charge. He fought like a man possessed. He defeated numerous enemies. He contributed greatly to their military success overall. His name was Tang Jiao. So the king summoned this warrior. The king singled him out for recognition, praised his courage and his military prowess, and wanted to reward him. Tang Jiao said he was really honored, but he didn't want the reward. He said everything he did was to repay the king's mercy on him. The king was puzzled by this statement and asked him what he meant. That's when it was finally revealed. Tang Jiao was the transgressor that night, 3 years ago at the banquet. He knew what he did was wrong, punishable by death under the law of the kingdom, which he also knew very well. He blamed himself for losing his mind after drinking so much. So, when he was unexpectedly forgiven by the king, he decided from that point on, he would do everything he could to repay the debt. That is why, in subsequent battles, he treated each battle as if his life was not his own. To him, it already belonged to the king. The end. So I hope everyone can see how the story ties in with this chapter. And just like in the Daodejing, where the chapters that talk about the king really refer to the individual, this story that talks about this particular king, I hope that you can see yourself as the ruler of the kingdom that is your life. Just as the king has ministers, advisors, and generals, you also have friends and allies. You have families, you have coworkers, you have acquaintances, you have people you know. You have allies as well. King Zhuang was a ruler with absolute power. In the same way, you're the absolute ruler of your own life. You have absolute control over your mind. That power, that control, the rule that you exert, that's the Yang principle. So let me ask everyone this question. When people have done something wrong, or maybe done something wrong to you, they have done you a wrong, or they have made a mistake, what do? Your response can range widely from blowing up, losing your temper, flying off the handle, hitting the ceiling, etc., to the other end of the extreme, to letting it go. Sometimes the wrong just isn't big enough as a deal to pursue. The other person may already know that it was a mistake that he or she had made. Should you then rub his or her nose in it? What would that accomplish? So perhaps the thing to do is to hold to the yin principle. Use gentleness, the soft touch, the flexibility, and the forgiveness, the grace, the mercy. Just as King Zhuang, Wang, had forgiven the transgressor and he had even no idea who that was. Suppose that in at least some of the situations in your life that you can find in yourself, to just forgive and let go and move on, particularly when the other person already know that it's wrong. Well, if you can combine the two, the yang energy with the yin soft touch, what will happen then? Well, you're utilizing yin and yang in accordance to the Tao. So you become the watercourse. As the watercourse, you inspire and bring people to you. You win over these people to your side. You earn their trust. You earn their respect. Maybe you even earn their loyalty. Just as the king earned the loyalty of this particular warrior, Tang Jiao, you too can earn the love, affection, commitment of the people around you. You can start building on that and attracting it to you. And that you can see is already the beginning of a great life. And that's what the Tao is really all about. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us travel safely. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.